Army. And what is John McCain's whole background? Being a prisoner of war and having all these medals and with the Vietnamese and so on, and Barack Obama has no background there. So, at any rate, that's where this is all coming from. I would say overall, John McCain, unfortunately, and there are these issues about as much as his, and I admire his story as much as I've heard any story. It's amazing what he went through. But we have to have a society at some point that has to ask the tough questions. Just like Obama's being asked, do you have the background, the experience, what would you do in these situations? Somebody's got to come up in the media and ask John McCain, or at least there has to be a debate. What does it mean to have missed 5.5 years? Remember, this included, because it started in October of 67, he came out in March of 73. 5.5 years. He went in with Johnson as president, then Kennedy and Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King were assassinated. He didn't experience that. He himself reports, McCain reports, he had to bone up and everything. He was amazed of what he didn't see. He didn't see all the political strife and the young people marching through the streets, which was a big deal for people like me born in 1950. And he didn't see the moon landing. He wasn't a part of that whole thing, which was a big deal. And Nixon being president and then extending the war with the Vietnam War into Laos and Cambodia and other kinds of things. And so he wasn't a part of that. And he had to see that later on. Well, what does it mean to have a president who has been a prisoner of war for 5.5 years? So that feeds into the thing about, possible who could go off kilter, particularly, like, for instance, what's going to happen? Let's just say the war goes on, whatever it is, McCain becomes president somehow, whatever, and then some of our soldiers are taken just like they were before. Remember the whole thing with the Al-Qaeda. And then Al-Qaeda says, they have them for so many weeks and months, and we know they're being tortured and all these other things. Then what is McCain going to do? Psychologically and emotionally, do we want a person who has been a prisoner of war where God knows what happened during those years? Psychologically and emotionally. Who in our society, sociologists, psychologists, I think that's a big issue, don't you think?
Well, yeah. How does it pertain, though, to the astrology of it? I mean, I understand that as an opinion, but
right.
It's
so connected to this chart for presidential. I call it the chart for presidential power. I don't call it the chart for George Washington taking the oath. The reason I should have said this, but what I have found is Dick Cheney's chart, for instance, is very connected to this chart. I've started to work with it so strongly, and what I do find is people who want to sort of take power that doesn't belong to them or magnify executive power beyond which it could be used, that's dangerous to me. Now, Obama is a sun sign Leo. We have had various sun sign Leos. And Bill Clinton is a sun sign Leo, and he was president 2 terms. Herbert Hoover was a sun sign Leo. We know he was a president before the Great Depression, although he was a pretty okay guy after that. I mean, he did a lot of good things even within the FDR administration, and sort of, but he happened to be president, and on his watch, as a sun sign Leo, we went into the Great Depression. With Bill Clinton, we didn't have a depression at all, and he's a sun sign Leo, but he was impeached for going beyond what he was supposed to do and then lying about it. So we do have dangers in Barack Obama, too, where he's a sun sign Leo. My feeling of the danger with Barack Obama is really not him. And remember in the speech he said, it's not me, it's you. That whole line, which was, I thought, one of his best lines, is the reason for this change is you, not me. Where he doesn't want to be put on a pedestal necessarily, at least that's what he said. The problem with Obama is this kind of, you brought up this thing with a guy called about the Antichrist. The problem really is that people are getting carried away, or at least for a while they were getting carried away with Obama mania. This, just so you know where this comes from Neptune. It's a misplaced Neptunian energy of fanaticism regarding religion and sort of a philosophical view. And it was very important that Obama brought that up, and hopefully
psychological insight on the economy?
Oh, yeah, the Federal Reserve question and so on. This is a big deal. I've written a lot about this. This is a two-pronged thing, very important, and they sort of work together. The Federal Reserve is actually, as many people know, it's a private entity. It's not just a bunch of banks, so we don't even know who the real people are behind it all, although Ben Bernanke is the current Fed chairman. Now, it has a chart, just like anything else, and it comes from December 23rd, 1913. It's a Capricorn entity with the sun early in that sign, and Pluto, the outermost planet, which moves very slowly, and which rules either, and this is interesting, they brought it up, dictatorial energy or bankruptcy and total wipeout. This planet Pluto is going to cross the solar life force of the Federal Reserve. Now, it's come close this year when Pluto got as far as the early part of Capricorn and almost hit the sun. And this was, remember that March 17th night when they bailed out, forget who it was now, that bank that was
right.
It was over a weekend. They made this whole big deal about it all, and it was like an extreme kind of a thing. If they hadn't done that kind of thing, with all the foreclosures and everything else happening, I mean, they're in a stopgap measure because they know the financial crisis has gone worldwide, all throughout the banking system. So we have either complete collapse of the economic system coming up through Pluto crossing the sun of the Federal Reserve. It'll be happening in January, February of 2009 is the first hit. Then a few months later it comes back. Then it comes back 3 times next year. We're going to have this extreme crisis. The thing that the Federal Reserve is going to want to do, though, and they've already started doing this, they want to go to Congress and they want to get bigger powers to manipulate and do things. They're already printing money left and right. They're creating these auctions. They're doing all these other things. Everything is to prop up a system that cannot be propped up because it's hundreds of trillions of dollars worldwide. The other connection here is Neptune. We discovered Neptune in 1846. Neptune is the higher octave in astrology to the planet Venus. Venus is a money planet, but it's, for our listeners, Venus in every person's chart is how you deal with your money, how you save your money. And Venus in a chart is well known. It's love, but it's also money. Neptune is higher money. It's world economics. It's how all the economies of the world fit together. And here's the linchpin. Next year, starting in April and then July, Neptune returns to where it was when it was discovered. In other words, it has a cycle of about 164 to 100 and, well, in this case, it would be about 164 years. And so we've never had a time in where Neptune came back because we're all living within the first cycle of Neptune moving from wherever it was in 1846. And now we're going to start a whole new cycle. And therefore we need a world sort of economic synthesis and revision. The whole world economy is sort of falling apart and dissolving. And the Federal Reserve is kind of like a center core of that energy.
Okay. So in 20 seconds then...
Yeah.
A projection on when things might improve?
Well, 2 to 3, people hanging on, and then we get through the worst of it in the next year to year and a half is really, really confusion, chaos, headlines all over the place. People need to just hold on, and then within 2 to 3 years, we sort of the light at the end of the tunnel.
All right, we'll leave that there. Now we'll just open up the phones, too, for your